I don't think you belong in this line. You may want to check the guest list.
Please welcome Adrian Cole, North Star's next Chief Executive Officer.
A. The ballroom at the Halcyon Museum smelled faintly of beeswax, champagne, and the white lilies arranged beneath a 30-foot glass ceiling. When Adrian Cole reached the receiving line, he offered his hand the same way he had to every person before him. Thomas Weller looked at it, then at Adrian's face, and left the hand hanging. "I think staff check-in is through the service corridor," Weller said. Adrian lowered his hand. He was 46, black, broad-shouldered, dressed in a midnight blue tuxedo that had been altered twice because his daughter insisted the sleeves should show exactly half an inch of cuff. Around his neck hung a silver Gala credential, embossed with the gold crest of North Star Civic Holdings. It read, "Board Gact, Table 1. Weller glanced at the badge without leaning close enough to read it. "I'm not staff," Adrian said. "Of course." Weller gave him the thin smile of someone correcting his own manners without correcting his assumption. "Consultant, then. We have several tonight." Behind Adrian, the line compressed by half a step. A woman with a donor ribbon pretended to study the program in her hands. A young man from the event crew stared at the floor. Near the registration table, Maya Chen, North Star's corporate secretary, had just turned from a conversation and was watching with an expression Adrian could not yet read. Adrian kept his voice level. "Adrian Cole." Weller's smile did not move. "Thomas Weller." "I know." That seemed to irritate him more than it should have. For 14 years, Weller had been chief executive of North Star, a regional infrastructure company that managed municipal transit contracts, water treatment modernization, and public-private development projects across 4 states. Tonight's gala was supposed to celebrate the company's largest philanthropic commitment yet, a 10-year fund for technical apprenticeships. It was also supposed to be Thomas Weller's last public event as chief executive. Only 6 people in the building knew that. Adrian had spent the previous 3 months in confidential transition meetings with the board, usually before sunrise or after Weller had left headquarters. The secrecy had been Weller's own request. He wanted to announce his retirement on his terms without market chatter overshadowing the gala. Adrian had agreed. At the time, it had seemed professional. Now Weller nodded toward the side of the ballroom. "If you're with one of the advisory firms, your tables are along the east wall. My seat is at table 1. For the first time, Weller actually looked at the credential. His eyes paused on the words. Then he looked back at Adrian. "That table is for directors, major donors, and senior leadership. I'm aware." A few people in line had stopped pretending not to listen. Weller's voice softened, which made the exchange feel worse. "These badges get printed in batches. Mistakes happen." Adrian felt an old reflex rise in him, the one his father had taught him in airport counters, bank offices, hotel lobbies. Never spend more emotion than the other person can use against you. He touched the edge of the credential. "Then we can ask Maya to verify it." Weller glanced toward the registration desk and saw Maya watching. Something changed in his posture. Not embarrassment, calculation. "That won't be necessary." He reached for the lanyard. Adrian stepped back before Weller could touch it. Weller's hand stopped in the air. "I'd prefer you didn't remove my credential. I'm trying to avoid an awkward situation." "So am I." A security supervisor stationed beside the ballroom doors looked over. Weller noticed him and raised 2 fingers. The supervisor approached. Maya started across the room. "Mr. Miller," she called. He turned slightly, but not enough to invite her into the conversation. "This gentleman appears to have been assigned the wrong access level," Weller said. "Please have it corrected." Maya stopped 3 feet away. Her eyes moved from Weller to Adrian, then to the security supervisor. "His credential is accurate." Weller gave a small laugh. "Maya, it's accurate," she repeated. The supervisor hesitated. Adrian saw the moment Weller was offered a clean exit. He could have asked one question. He could have looked at the guest list. He could have let Maya speak. Instead, Weller turned to the supervisor. "Until someone from the board confirms that, he doesn't enter the main floor." The supervisor shifted between Adrian and the ballroom. Behind him, a string quartet began the opening bars that signaled dinner seating. Adrian looked past Weller toward table 1. Where an empty chair waited beside the board chair's place setting, his chair. Maya's mouth tightened. "Thomas," she said, dropping the formal title now, "you need to reconsider that." Weller did not. He pointed toward the marble foyer. "Sir, you can wait outside while we sort this out." Adrian held his gaze for a moment, then stepped away from the receiving line. Not because Weller had the right to remove him, because Adrian wanted everyone present to be absolutely clear about who had made the decision. The security supervisor followed him into the foyer. Behind them, the ballroom doors closed. And inside, on the stage beneath the North Star crest, the board chair was already walking toward the microphone with an announcement scheduled for 8:15. It was 8:11. The foyer was cooler than the ballroom. Its polished marble held the night's air conditioning like a stored insult, and Adrian could hear the muffled applause through the closed doors as if it came from another building. The security supervisor, a square-faced man with a radio clipped too high on his lapel, stood beside him without touching him. "Sir," the man said, "I'm going to need you to remain here until this is clarified. It has been clarified, I understand." "No," Adrian said, keeping his voice low. "You understand what Mr. Weller told you. Those are different things." The supervisor's eyes flicked to the doors. Adrian read his name tag, Daniel Ruiz. The man looked surprised. "Daniel," Adrian said, "I'm going to ask you to do two things. First, do not put your hands on me unless I'm threatening someone. I'm not. Second, write down who instructed you to hold me outside a donor event after Corporate Secretary Maya Chen confirmed my access." Ruiz shifted his weight. He was not hostile. That made the moment more dangerous in a different way. Men who were only following instructions could do harm with a clean conscience. "I don't write incident reports unless there's an incident," Ruiz said. Adrian glanced at the closed doors. This is one. Maya came through them so fast the lanyard around her neck swung against her black dress. "Daniel, he's cleared," she said. "I hear you, Miss Chen, but Mr. Weller asked me to wait for board confirmation. I am corporate secretary." "I know. Then you know I maintain the board access list." Ruiz looked pained. He said board confirmation. Maya took out her phone, tapped once, and held the screen up. Adrian saw the guest protocol sheet, the final version approved that morning. His name appeared under Table 1 with a notation only a few people would understand. A. Cole, incoming executive appointee. His seat held beside Arbel. Ruiz looked at it, then toward the doors again. "I'm sorry," he said. "I need someone above me to clear the change." "There is no change," Maya said. Adrian heard the tremor under her control. She was angry, but she also knew the same thing he did. If Ruiz disobeyed Weller in public and the board announcement somehow got delayed or changed, Ruiz could become the easiest person to blame. Adrian removed his own phone, but he did not make a call. Instead, he opened his messages and sent one sentence to Rosalind Bell, the board chair. "I'm outside the ballroom. Weller refused my handshake, challenged my credential, and had security hold me after Maya verified my seat. Please preserve the entrance camera and registration log." He stared at the message before sending it. His thumb hovered a second longer than it should have. There were cleaner ways to enter a company than this. He had promised his daughter, Simone, he would not let his first night become a spectacle. She was 16 and had watched him try on the tuxedo in their kitchen while a pot of rice hissed over the burner. She had taken 3 photos, rejected all of them, then said, "Dad, please don't make your serious grant review face when they clap." He had told her he would try. Now he pressed send. She lowered her voice. "Adrian, I can bring Rosalind out. Not yet. She's about to announce you, I know. You should be in the room. I should have been let in the room when you confirmed my credential." The words were sharper than he intended. Maya absorbed them, then nodded once. She did not defend herself. That made him regret the tone more than if she had pushed back. Before either of them could speak again, the ballroom doors opened. Weller came out with 2 board members Adrian recognized from the transition committee. Henry Vale, who owned a private equity stake large enough to make people laugh too hard at his jokes, and Celeste Moreno, a retired transit commissioner who missed very little. Weller's face had reset into public concern. "Adrian," he said, using the name now, "I'm told there's confusion." "There isn't." Miller gave the board members a look that translated the exchange before Adrian could. Difficult. Combative. Not ready for the room. Henry Vale stepped closer, lowering his voice as if that helped. "Maybe we take 5 minutes in the side office." Adrian looked at him. "To discuss what? To lower the temperature?" Celeste looked at Weller. "Thomas, did you ask security to keep him out?" "I asked for verification of an irregular credential." "Maya verified it," Adrian said. Weller turned to Maya after the fact. "No," Maya said. "Before you called Daniel over." For the first time, Weller's composure cracked at the edge. Inside the ballroom, the applause swelled again, then faded. Someone had taken the stage. The program was moving without them. Henry checked his watch. "We can't do this here." Adrian looked through the narrow opening between the doors. He could see Rosalind Bell at the podium, silver hair catching the stage lights, one hand resting on the announcement folder. Her eyes moved across table 1, found the empty chair, and lifted toward the foyer. Adrian's phone buzzed. A reply from Rosalind. Received. "Do not leave. I am making the announcement now." Weller saw him read it. "What is that?" Adrian slid the phone into his jacket pocket. "Board confirmation." The doors opened wider as a staff member hurried out, flustered and pale under the chandelier light. "Mr. Weller," she whispered. "Ms. Bell is asking everyone from the Executive Transition Committee to come to the front." Celeste stepped toward the ballroom. Henry followed. Maya stayed beside Adrian. Taylor did not move. From inside, Rosalind's voice carried through the speakers, clean and unmistakable. "Before we celebrate North Star's next decade, we need to recognize the person who will be accountable for leading it." The foyer fell still around Adrian. Then Rosalind said his name. Rosalind Bell did not rush the sentence. Adrian heard the shape of it through the speakers before he let himself believe the words. "Please welcome Adrian Cole, unanimously appointed by the board as North Star Civic Holdings' next chief executive officer." A murmur moved through the ballroom. Not loud enough to be applause yet, not quiet enough to hide. It had texture. Silverware paused against china, chairs shifted, someone said, "Who?" Too close to a live table microphone, and then the first clean claps began near the front. In the foyer, Thomas Weller turned toward Adrian as if the announcement had been made in a language he had not agreed to understand. Maya exhaled once. Daniel Rui stepped back from Adrian so quickly his shoulder nearly brushed the wall. "Mr. Cole," he said, and the title carried apology, confusion, and fear all at once. Adrian did not answer him immediately. He looked at Weller. "Ask me to wait outside." Weller's mouth opened, closed, then found the expression he used in annual reports. There was a credentialing mistake. "No," Maya said. Weller's eyes cut toward her. She had spoken softly, but the word had landed between them. Adrian turned to Daniel. "Did anyone at registration tell you my badge was false?" "No, sir." "Did I refuse to identify myself?" "No." "Did I threaten anyone?" "No." "Then write the report." Daniel swallowed. "Yes, sir." Weller stepped closer. "This is not the time." "It became the time when you made security part of it." From inside the ballroom, Rosalind continued, now telling the room about Adrian's years turning around public infrastructure partnerships without stripping workers out of the equation, about his audits after flood control failures in Louisiana, about his insistence that municipal contracts were promises to people who rode buses, drank tap water, and waited under leaking station roofs. Adrian heard his biography converted into ceremony while he stood in the hall like a problem to be managed. It embarrassed him more than the insult did. He had never liked being introduced before entering a room. His mother used to say a name should walk in on its own feet. When she died, he found 4 of his old school certificates in her dresser drawer, each one flattened under a church program so the corners would not curl. She had saved evidence of him long before anyone asked for it. Maya touched his sleeve lightly. "Waiting. She's waiting." Adrian nodded. Then he made his first imperfect decision of the night. He walked into the ballroom before Daniel finished documenting the incident. It was not strategic. It was pride, fatigue, and the human desire not to let the worst moment decide the next one. He could feel Maya hesitate behind him, and he knew she wanted him to secure the report first. But Rosalind had asked him to enter. Hundreds of faces had turned. The chair beside table 1 was empty under the stage lights. He crossed the threshold. The applause grew uneven at first, then fuller as people stood near the front. Some recognized him from the transition materials. Some were clapping because others had started. A few watched Weller, trying to decide what kind of room they were in now. Adrian moved past table 1 and mounted the short steps to the stage. Rosalind held out her hand. He took it. The room saw that. Her grip was dry and firm, the hand of a woman who had chaired rail budget hearings for 2 decades and did not confuse warmth with softness. "Adrian," she said into the microphone, "we are grateful you said yes." He leaned close enough for only her to hear. "Got my message?" "Yes, entrance camera, registration log, security report, already instructed." That steadied him. Rosalind turned back to the audience. "Mr. Cole, we'll say a few words before dinner." The microphone waited. Adrian looked across the ballroom. The lilies under the glass ceiling were too white under the lights. The quartet sat with bows lowered. At table 1, Celeste Moreno had not sat down. Henry Vale had. Weller remained near the ballroom entrance, just inside the doors, his hands clasped in front of him as if he were receiving bad news with dignity, rather than having authored it. Adrian had prepared remarks in his pocket. Simone had made him rehearse them twice, then warned him that infrastructure is not a bedtime story unless you make it one. He did not take out the paper. "Good evening," he said. His voice sounded steadier than he felt. "I'm honored to be here. I'm also aware that some people in this room learned my name 5 minutes ago, and some learned it only after deciding what table I belonged at." A small movement went through the audience. Rosalind stood still beside him. Adrian could have stopped there. He should have stopped there. Let the board handle the rest. Let the process work. But the marble cold of the foyer still sat in his chest. "I won't turn tonight into a public trial," he said. "Star does not need theater. It needs record-keeping, courage, and a better habit of checking facts before converting suspicion into policy." Weller's face tightened. Adrian heard it before he saw it. A single clap from somewhere near the east wall. Then another. Not applause yet. Escaping from people who had been told to stay professional. He continued, "If this company is going to build systems people depend on, we cannot treat belonging as a favor handed out by whoever feels most comfortable at the door." Rosalind's eyes flicked toward him. That was enough. He knew he had gone one sentence too far for a first address, however true the sentence was. So he changed course. "Tonight is about the apprenticeship fund," he said. "Tomorrow morning is about the work." The applause came stronger this time, relieved to have a place to go. Adrian stepped away from the microphone. As Rosalind resumed the program, Maya entered the ballroom and moved toward Daniel at the rear. Adrian watched her stop, look toward the foyer, and stiffen. Daniel was no longer writing. Weller had him by the elbow near the service corridor, speaking close to his ear. Then Daniel folded the blank incident form once and slid it inside his jacket. Dinner arrived under silver domes Adrian barely noticed. He sat at table 1 with a place card in front of him and the taste of nothing in his mouth. Servers moved between the tables with the quiet speed of people trained not to exist unless a glass was empty. The first course was a fennel salad with citrus cut so thin the slices looked almost transparent. Adrian pushed one piece with his fork and watched it slide back into the dressing. Rosalind leaned toward him without turning her head. "You saw Daniel put the form away?" "Yes. Maya is trying to get him alone. Weller got to him first." Rosalind's jaw worked once. "Thomas does not supervise contracted security. He seems to believe fear travels farther than org charts." Across the table, Henry Vale laughed too loudly at something a donor said. Celeste Moreno had her phone below the tablecloth, typing with one thumb. Weller sat 2 seats from Adrian, speaking to a hospital foundation director as if the evening had gone exactly as planned. That was the part Adrian disliked most. Not the refusal, not even the security hold. It was the effort to fold the wrong thing back into the room, smooth the crease, and ask everyone to admire the linen. His phone buzzed against his thigh. A text from Simone. "Clap? Be honest." Adrian looked down at it and felt the first real ache of the night. He imagined her at home in her hoodie, one foot tucked under her at the kitchen table, pretending to do calculus while tracking the Gala livestream. She had insisted on staying home because fancy adults make me tired, but she had cared enough to steam his shirt. He typed. They clapped. Your cuff measurement was correct. 3 dots appeared, vanished, appeared again. Why do you look mad in the livestream thumbnail? Adrian turned the phone face down. Rosalind noticed. Family? My daughter. Does she know? She knows I was being introduced. He took a breath. She doesn't know I was stopped. Rosalind looked toward the stage where a program officer was describing the apprenticeship fund. She may find out. I know. That was the personal cost he had not calculated in any transition memo. A company could preserve logs, interview witnesses, and issue corrections. A child watching her father stand at the edge of a room could learn something colder than policy. Adrian lifted his water glass and set it down without drinking. I should have waited for the report, he said. Yes, Rosalind replied. He looked at her. She did not soften it. You should have. But Thomas should not have created the situation. Daniel should not have ignored Maya's authority. And Henry should not be pretending this is mainly a timing problem. That made Adrian almost smile. You put everybody in a clean little file. I chaired public hearings. Files keep people from escaping into mood. Maya returned to the table during the dessert service. Her face was composed, but Adrian saw the tension in the way she held her folder against her ribs. Daniel says there was no incident, she said. Rosalind's expression did not change. Did he say that in writing? No, he said, Mr. Miller clarified it was a misunderstanding before anything official occurred. Adrian felt heat climb the back of his neck. Weller looked over then, as if summoned by the word misunderstanding. I hope we're not still turning an awkward introduction into a governance issue. Celeste put her phone on the table. A chief executive using contracted security to override board access is a governance issue. Weller's smile thinned. Celeste, please. We're in front of guests. That didn't trouble you in the receiving line. Henry murmured, let's not litigate this over cheesecake. Adrian turned to him. What would be the proper dessert for it? For half a second, Henry looked offended. Then Celeste laughed once into her napkin, a dry, surprised sound that loosened something at the table without making the matter smaller. Weller did not laugh. You have a choice tonight, he said to Adrian, keeping his voice low. You can begin your tenure as a builder or as a man determined to punish a misread social moment. Adrian had heard versions of that sentence all his life. The misread loan application, the misread lobby entrance, the misread complaint. The burden shifted until the person harmed had to prove not only the harm, but that naming it was not the real offense. He pushed his dessert plate away. I'm not asking for punishment tonight, Adrian said. I'm asking for preservation. Weller's eyes flickered. There it was, not guilt. Ignition. You don't need entrance footage to lead North Star, Weller said. No. But North Star needs it to know who else has been stopped by a feeling dressed up as procedure. Maya opened her folder. I checked the registration notes, she said. There were 2 previous badge challenges tonight, both at the east entrance. Both guests were redirected to vendor check-in before I was called. Rosalind turned fully now. Names? Maya hesitated. One was a city procurement deputy. The other was Dr. Lionel Avery from the Apprenticeship Advisory Council. Adrian knew Dr. Avery, black 68, a retired community college president with a cane carved from walnut. Weller's hand went still beside his coffee cup. Celeste looked toward the ballroom doors. Where is Dr. Avery now? Maya's voice lowered. He left 20 minutes ago. Adrian stood before he had decided to. Rosalind said his name, warning and permission tangled together. He picked up his phone and finally answered Simone. Something happened. I'll explain before you see clips. I'm okay. I need to handle it right. He turned to Maya. Find Dr. Avery's driver contact if he gave one. Ask Daniel not to leave the building. And get the east entrance footage placed on legal hold before anyone decides it was just a social moment. This time, Adrian did not head for the stage. He walked toward the service corridor. The service corridor had none of the museum's gala softness. Back there, the lilies vanished, the music thinned to a pulse through plaster, and the floor changed from marble to gray rubber that squeaked under polished shoes. Adrian followed Maya past stacked crates of empty champagne flutes and a coat rack crowded with black server jackets. The air smelled of coffee, floor cleaner, and hot electrical cable. Somewhere beyond a swinging door, someone was loading trays into a dishwasher hard enough to make the metal complain. Daniel Ruiz stood beside a freight elevator with his radio in one hand. He looked younger away from the ballroom lights. When he saw Adrian, his shoulders came up. Mr. Cole, I was just checking deployment. No, you weren't, Maya said. Daniel looked at her, then at Adrian. Mr. Weller told me the matter was handled. Did he tell you not to write the report? Adrian asked. Daniel rubbed his thumb along the edge of the radio. He said no formal incident occurred because no one was removed. I was denied entry, temporarily, by you. Daniel flinched. Adrian regretted the directness and kept it anyway. This was the hard part about accountability. It required naming the person holding the pen, not only the person who whispered near his elbow. I'm not trying to cost you your job, Adrian said. No. But I won't let your job become the place this gets buried. Daniel stared at the rubber floor. Maya opened her tablet. Your company's contract requires incident documentation for any access dispute involving a credentialed executive guest. That is Clause 9, subsection C. Daniel looked up. You have our contract? I approved the vendor packet. A small sound escaped him, almost a laugh without humor. Of course you did. Before Adrian could press further, Celeste came through the corridor door with Rosalind behind her. Celeste carried her shawl over one arm like she had removed it for a fight. Rosalind had the controlled expression of someone already thinking in minutes, permissions, and board votes. IT has the west entrance footage preserved, Rosalind said. East entrance is handled by the museum's vendor, not ours. We need museum authorization. Who has it? Adrian asked. The deputy director on duty. Maya tapped the tablet again. Elena Price. Daniel swallowed. She's in the loading office. Celeste looked at him. Then walk us there. Daniel did. The loading office was a cramped room with a scratched desk, a wall of monitor feeds, and a corkboard full of laminated emergency routes. Elena Price, a woman in her 50s with reading glasses on a chain, looked up from a clipboard as 5 people entered. No, she said before anyone spoke. Whatever this is, no. Rosalind stepped forward. Miss Price, we need preservation of the east entrance footage from 6:30 to 8:30 tonight. Elena's eyes moved from Rosalind to Adrian, then to Daniel. Is this about the credential issue? Which one? Adrian asked. That stopped her. Elena removed her glasses. I am not authorized to release footage without legal. We are not asking for release, Maya said. You're asking for preservation. Elena's gaze sharpened. She understood the difference. The system overwrites temporary footage after 72 hours unless flagged. Then flag it, Celeste said. I need a reason. Adrian stepped closer to the desk, close enough to see the monitor labels. East vestibule. Check. Service hall, loading bay. The east vestibule feed showed donors still drifting in late, gold badges catching on camera as tiny flashes. Access disputes involving credentialed guests, he said. Possible selective enforcement. Corporate governance review. Vendor compliance. Elena looked at Daniel. Were there 3? Daniel closed his eyes for half a second. Yes, he said. That I know of. Maya looked at him. You knew about Dr. Avery? I wasn't first contact. My team lead radioed me after the deputy left. He said the guest was upset and decided not to stay. Adrian felt the night tilt into a larger shape. Thomas Weller had not merely misread one black man at the receiving line. A pattern had formed at the edge of the gala, where important people could be made small before they reached witnesses with titles. Rosalind turned to Maya. Put the vendor under preservation notice in writing now. Maya began typing. Elena hesitated, then rolled her chair to the keyboard. I'll flag the footage, but I need someone from museum legal copied by morning. You'll have it tonight, Rosalind said. Daniel's radio crackled before anyone moved. A voice said, Dan, Mr. Weller wants east vestibule access restricted to museum personnel. He says there's been unauthorized review requests. Daniel looked at Adrian. For once, nobody spoke over the silence. Then Daniel lifted the radio. Negative, he said, voice rough but steady. Do not restrict access. Preserve all east vestibule footage. I'm filing an incident report. The radio hissed back, confused. Adrian watched Daniel lower it with shaking fingers. It was not forgiveness. It was the first clean line in a night full of smudged ones. His tablet pinged. She read the screen and her face changed. Dr. Avery's driver just replied, he's still outside. They're parked on Madison because Dr. Avery asked for a minute before going home. Adrian looked toward the service exit. Rosalind touched his arm. Adrian, think before you go out there. Cameras may be outside too. I know. And Thomas will say you're escalating. Adrian adjusted one cuff, the half-inch Simone had measured. Let him say it after Dr. Avery tells us what happened. He pushed open the service door, and the August heat came in carrying traffic noise, river damp, and a man's tired voice from the curb saying, I wondered how long it would take somebody to notice I was missing. Dr. Lionel Avery sat in the back seat of a black sedan with the door open and one polished shoe on the curb. His cane rested across his knees, walnut handle worn smooth where his palm had shaped it over years. The driver stood near the trunk, pretending not to listen. Dixon Avenue steamed after a short evening rain. Taxi tires hissed through shallow water, and the museum service lights painted the curb in a flat yellow that made everyone look more tired than they were. Adrian stopped 2 paces from the car. Dr. Avery. The older man looked up. His silver beard was trimmed close. His tuxedo jacket had been folded beside him as if he had removed it before anger could wrinkle it. Adrian Cole, he said. I was wondering whether the board had misplaced you too. Adrian felt the sentence land harder than any accusation would have. I'm sorry, he said. Dr. Avery gave him a long look. For what you did or what you represent now, that was fair, for not noticing sooner. The older man tapped one finger on the cane. That answer has the advantage of being true. Rosalind, Maya, Celeste, and Daniel gathered behind Adrian, but he did not crowd the car. Dr. Avery had already been crowded once tonight. Maybe more than once. Would you be willing to tell us what happened? Adrian asked. Dr. Avery looked toward Daniel. Daniel took one step forward. Sir, I owe you an apology. You owe me a report, Dr. Avery said. An apology can sit in the waiting room until the paperwork has a chair. Celeste made a small sound of approval. Daniel nodded. Yes, sir. Dr. Avery turned back to Adrian. I came through the east entrance because my hip doesn't enjoy marble staircases pretending to be architecture. Your invitation said accessibility entrance. The young woman at the desk looked at my badge, then at me, and asked if I was delivering remarks for the kitchen staff. Maya closed her eyes briefly. She said kitchen staff? Rosalind asked. She corrected herself to event support after I asked her to read the credential out loud. Did she read it? Adrian asked. No. She called a supervisor. Daniel said, that would be Peter Lang. And Mr. Lang asked for a secondary ID. Dr. Avery continued. I provided it. He said the name matched, but the credential category was unusual. What category? Maya asked. Advisory Council Founder. Table 2. Maya's head lifted. That category is not unusual. No, Dr. Avery said, but apparently I was. No one tried to soften it. A bus sighed at the corner, lowering itself for passengers. Adrian watched its doors fold open and thought of every contract meeting where North Star executives had spoken about mobility with clean charts and no faces. Dr. Avery had spent 35 years building workforce programs for people who could not afford to be late twice. Tonight, he had been kept outside a door marked accessible. What happened after secondary ID? Adrian asked. They asked me to wait while they checked with the host. Who did they call? Maya asked. Dr. Avery pointed with his cane toward the museum. Not Miss Chen. He would have recognized her voice. A man came out, looked me over, and said the room was at capacity for non-essential guests. Rosalind's lips parted. Thomas? Celeste asked. Dr. Avery shook his head. Younger, brown hair, navy tuxedo. He wore a sponsor pin shaped like a bridge. Henry Vale. Adrian felt the night take on its second problem. Henry had not merely minimized the conflict at Table 1. He had been near the east entrance before Weller stopped Adrian. And Henry's fund had pushed hardest for the apprenticeship announcement to become a donor showcase rather than a community partnership. Maya typed a note. Did he give his name? He did not. People rarely give their names when they are deciding yours is inconvenient. Daniel lifted his radio again. I can identify him on the footage. Rosalind looked at him. Then you will. Dr. Avery studied Adrian. Yeah. And after the question was not about footage. Adrian understood he had the title now. The room inside had clapped. But title without remedy was only a better lit chair. After that, Adrian said, we preserve the footage, take statements from you and the other guest, separate the security vendor review from the Executive Transition Committee, and remove anyone with a conflict from handling the inquiry. Dr. Avery's eyes stayed on him. Including donors. Even if they funded the program you came here to celebrate. Adrian looked back at the museum. Their light spilled through tall windows and made the Gala look peaceful from the street. Especially then. His phone buzzed again. Simone. There's a clip online. It cuts off before you walk in. People are saying you made it about race. Are you okay? Adrian stared at the words. The harm had left the building faster than the facts. He typed only, I'm okay. Don't argue with strangers for me. I'll call soon. When he looked up, Dr. Avery was watching him with a gentleness that made the night worse. Children see the edited version first, the older man said. Institutions count on adults being too embarrassed to restore the whole tape. Adrian nodded once. From inside the service corridor, Maya's tablet chimed. She read, then looked at Rosalind. The east entrance footage is preserved, she said. But Henry Vale just requested a private board huddle before any further action. Rosalind's face hardened. Adrian glanced from Dr. Avery's cane to the museum doors. Then let's make sure he doesn't get to call it private. The board huddle took place in the museum's education studio, not because it was appropriate, but because it was empty. Children's watercolor projects hung along one wall. Bridges, buses, crooked skylines, a blue river under a purple sun. The room smelled of tempera paint and disinfectant wipes. Small plastic chairs had been stacked in the corner beneath a sign that read, Please, return supplies where you them. Adrian noticed the sign because he needed something simple to look at before he faced grown people trying to misplace responsibility. Rosalind took the teacher's desk at the front. Celeste stood beside the whiteboard. Maya set her tablet on a low-activity table and began recording attendance for the official minutes. Henry Vale entered last, still wearing his donor smile. Thomas Weller came in behind him. Adrian looked at Rosalind. "Is Thomas here?" Weller answered before she could. "Because I remain chief executive until midnight. And because," Henry added, "we need continuity." Celeste folded her arms. "Continuity is a strange word for interference." Henry's smile faded a degree. "Let's be careful." "No," Adrian said. "Let's be accurate." Maya's fingers paused over the tablet. Adrian did not sit. He placed both hands on the edge of a table built for 8-year-olds and felt its rounded plastic lip under his palms. "We have 3 access disputes involving credentialed guests tonight," he said. "One involved me. One involved Dr. Avery, Advisory Council founder. One involved a city procurement deputy whose name we still need confirmed. Corporate secretary verification was overridden. Contracted security was discouraged from filing a report. East entrance footage has been preserved, and Daniel Ruiz is prepared to identify who approached Dr. Avery." Henry looked at Rosalind. "Prepared by whom?" Daniel, standing near the door, flinched but did not look away. "By his own memory," Adrian said. Henry turned to him. "Adrian, you have been CEO for approximately 9 minutes. Still, I would advise against using your first official act to intimidate a contracted worker." The sentence was polished enough to sound noble if heard from the hallway. Daniel opened his mouth, then shut it. Adrian held up one hand, not to silence him, but to keep himself from answering too fast. "You're right about one thing," he said. "Daniel should not be pressured. Not by Thomas. Not by you." Maya resumed typing. Rosalind looked at Henry. "Were you at the east entrance when Dr. Avery was denied entry?" Henry gave a small laugh. "Denied entry is doing a lot of work." Celeste moved toward the whiteboard and picked up a marker. "Fine. Redirected. Delayed." Discouraged. "Choose your favorite verb." "This is absurd," Weller said. "The gala had multiple entrances, credential types, sponsors, civic officials, vendors. Confusion happens." Adrian turned to him. "Then why stop the reports?" Weller's eyes sharpened. "Not stop. Reports." Daniel's voice came from the door. "You told me no formal incident occurred. I clarified context. You took my form." The marker squeaked once in Celeste's hand. Weller looked at Daniel as if the man had spoken out of turn in someone else's language. "I suggested you avoid escalating a misunderstanding." Daniel reached into his jacket and removed the folded form. He held it in both hands. "I should have finished it." Rosalind's voice was calm. "You may finish it now." Henry stepped in. "Before that happens, I need to disclose something that may simplify this. Dr. Avery was not removed because of race. He was removed because his advisory council appointment expired last quarter." Maya looked up immediately. "No, it didn't." Henry blinked. Maya turned the tablet so the room could see the document. "His appointment was extended by board vote in May, 2 years. Resolution is in the consent packet you approved." Henry's face tightened. "Then the printed donor packet may have been outdated." "That would explain a question," Adrian said. "It would not explain calling him non-essential after his ID matched." Henry's gaze slid away. Celeste wrote on the board in block letters, "What was noun before exclusion?" Then beneath it, credential. ID, accessibility entrance, advisory status, host list. She capped the marker. "That is the accountability test. Not what everyone wished had been true later. What each person knew before they acted." Adrian felt the sentence settle the room into shape. Maya opened another file. "The registration log shows Dr. Avery was checked at 7:34. His badge scanned green. The note added at 7:41 says, 'Guests declined to remain after seating concern.' Dr. Avery, seated near the window now, lifted his cane slightly. "That is a tidy little lie." Daniel looked at him. "Yup, sir, I didn't write that note." "I believe you," Dr. Avery said. "That doesn't make it less useful to whoever did." Maya tapped the tablet again. The note was entered under Peter Lang's staff ID. Rosalind looked at Daniel. "Where is Peter?" Daniel answered, "He was sent home 10 minutes ago." No one needed to ask by whom. Adrian turned to Weller. Weller straightened. "I did not send him home." Henry adjusted his cuff. Celeste noticed, so did Adrian. Rosalind stood. "Effective immediately, the board is placing preservation holds on all gala access records, vendor communications, entrance footage, credential scans, and staff notes. Thomas, you are instructed not to contact museum staff, security personnel, donors, or guests about tonight's access disputes unless counsel is present." Weller's face reddened. "You cannot muzzle the sitting CEO during a company event." "I am not muzzling you," Rosalind said. I am preserving an inquiry from contamination. Henry looked at Adrian. And my role? Adrian answered before Rosalind could. You step back from the apprenticeship fund launch pending review. Henry laughed once. That fund carries my name. No, Dr. Avery said from the window. It carries the students. The room went quiet, not because the words were grand, but because nobody could improve them. Rosalind nodded to Maya. Enter it as an interim board directive. Maya typed. Henry stared at Adrian with the first honest dislike he had shown all night. This will cost you allies. Adrian looked at the children's paintings on the wall, the bridges drawn in uneven crayon, all of them trying to reach the other side. Then we'll find out which ones were only sponsors. Daniel unfolded the incident form on the activity table. This time, no one stopped him from writing. By midnight, Adrian's first official act as chief executive had not been a toast, a handshake, or a photograph beneath the North Star crest. It was a hold notice. Maya sent it from the education studio while the gala continued 2 floors below, with the strange discipline of expensive events. Music resumed. Dessert forks clicked. Donors collected gift bags printed with the apprenticeship fund's logo, unaware that the fund's sponsor had just been removed from its launch committee pending review. The decision was temporary. Adrian made sure the word appeared in the minutes. Temporary mattered. Temporary meant North Star was not pretending proof already existed where it did not. Temporary meant the board had authority to prevent interference while the facts were gathered. Temporary also meant Henry Vale could still call lawyers, donors, and anyone else willing to treat procedure as persecution when it stopped protecting him. Thomas Weller was escorted, not by security, by Rosalind and outside counsel to a side exit after refusing twice to acknowledge the communication restriction. He was not fired. His retirement remained effective at midnight, and the board suspended his advisory transition agreement pending the outcome of the review. Henry hated that distinction. You're letting him keep the honor of retirement, he said after Weller left. Adrian stood at the studio window, looking down at the museum courtyard where rainwater had collected in the seams between stone tiles. We're documenting misconduct. They're not staging a hanging. Henry's mouth twisted. Convenient morality. No, Celeste said from the table. Governance. Daniel finished his incident report at 12:17 a.m. His handwriting became smaller as he reached the part where Weller spoke to him in the foyer, then smaller again where he admitted folding the form and putting it away. He did not excuse himself. He also did not make himself noble. Adrian respected that more than the apology waiting behind his teeth. Maya scanned the report before Daniel signed it. Are you comfortable with this being sent to your employer, museum legal, and our outside counsel? She asked. Daniel looked toward Dr. Avery, who had stayed despite his driver's quiet offers to take him home. No, Daniel said, but I'll sign it. He did. That was the first practical repair of the night. Not large enough for a press release. Large enough to keep the record from becoming fog. At 12:40, the East entrance footage arrived in a secure folder accessible only to counsel, Rosalind, Maya, and the independent investigator Rosalind retained before leaving the studio. They did not play all of it. Adrian insisted on that, though every angry part of him wanted to watch the tape immediately and make the room look at what it had allowed. Instead, counsel scrubbed to 3 timestamps. At 7:12, the city procurement deputy, a black woman in a bronze evening jacket, was stopped despite a green credential scan. Peter Lang pointed her toward vendor check-in. She argued for less than a minute, then made a phone call, and was eventually admitted through another entrance. At 7:34, Dr. Avery arrived through the accessible door. The footage had no audio, but his cane, his ID, and the green scan were clear. At 7:41, Henry Vale entered the frame, spoke to Peter, glanced at Dr. Avery, and made a small outward motion with 2 fingers. Dr. Avery left at 7:49. At 8:07, Adrian entered the receiving line through the main doors. Weller refused his hand at 8:08. Nobody spoke for several seconds after the 3rd clip ended. The proof was not perfect. It did not capture every sentence. It did not show the inside of Weller's mind or Henry's. It did not need to. It showed decisions. Rosalind closed the laptop. Interim findings, Maya read from her notes. Credential access was overridden 3 times after valid scans. 2 overrides involved guests connected to public accountability roles in the apprenticeship fund. Incident documentation was discouraged in at least 1 case. A guest record was edited to imply voluntary departure after a seating concern, And immediate remedies? Rosalind asked. Adrian answered this time. Notify the two guests in writing before any public statement. Offer Dr. Avery and Deputy Marshal direct apologies from the board, not from communications staff. Pause the Gala security vendor's renewal. Remove Henry from fund governance pending independent review. Suspend Peter Lang from North Star Events until the museum completes its own investigation. Reopen advisory council seating and give Dr. Avery the choice to chair first apprenticeship oversight meeting, if he still wants it. Dr. Avery lifted his eyebrows. You do know I may say no. I do. Good. The offer is cleaner. Henry stood. You cannot remove me from a fund I helped finance. Rosalind looked at him. The board can remove you from governance of a company program. My foundation pledged $3 million, and North Star will not trade access for money, Adrian said. Henry stared at him. You're making a mistake. Adrian felt the exhaustion now, deep behind his eyes. He thought of Simone still awake, probably pretending she was not refreshing comments under a chopped-up clip. He thought of Dr. Avery sitting at the curb in his shirt sleeves because entering the ballroom again had cost too much. No, Adrian said. I made one when I walked in before Daniel finished the report. Hey, I'm trying not to make. Another Henry's anger cooled into something more useful to him. Then record this too, he said to Maya. My foundation is placing its pledge under review. Maya typed it without looking up. Celeste capped her pen. There's the cost. The first visible change came before the Gala staff finished stacking chairs. Rosalind ordered the North Star crest removed from the east entrance signage until the access procedure could be rewritten with the museum and accessibility advisors present. No more sponsor-only discretion, no more unclear badge categories, no more quiet redirection without a logged reason and a named reviewer. At 1:06 a.m., Adrian stepped back into the ballroom. The flowers had begun to sag. On the stage, a technician was coiling microphone cable in loops over his forearm. Adrian picked up his unread prepared remarks from the podium where someone had placed them after the announcement. Simone had written in pencil at the top, "Don't make it boring." He folded the page and put it in his pocket. Then he called his daughter before the internet could raise her for another hour. Simone answered on the fourth ring with the tone of a person trying to sound casual and failing. Are you fired already? Adrian closed his eyes in the empty ballroom. No. Are you trending? I hope not. You are a little trending. A worker pushed a cart of stacked plates past him and pretended not to hear. The stage lights had been dimmed to half strength, leaving the North Star crest dull against the backdrop. Out the crowd, the room looked less powerful. Just carpet, cables, flowers, rented linens, and people paid by the hour to return it all to normal. Adrian loosened his bow tie. What did you see? A clip where that man doesn't shake your hand. Then you say something at the microphone. Weird. How weird? Like you came there looking for a fight. He leaned against the edge of the stage. I didn't, I know. Her voice broke on the second word, and she covered it with annoyance. I'm not stupid. I didn't think you were. Kind of did when you told me not to argue with strangers. Adrian almost smiled, then couldn't. Fair. There was a pause. He heard the small domestic sounds on her end. The refrigerator hum, a cabinet closing, the scrape of the kitchen chair she always dragged instead of lifting. It hurt, she asked. He looked toward the ballroom entrance where Weller had refused his hand. Yes. Did you want to hit him? No, Dad. He rubbed his forehead. I wanted to embarrass him so completely that nobody would ever confuse my restraint with permission again. That sounds more like you. It's not my best quality. It's not your worst. The sentence steadied him because it sounded like her mother. Not the words exactly, but the way truth arrived without decoration. Simone's mother had died 4 years earlier, and grief still appeared at odd angles inside ordinary replies where there was no time to prepare for it. I need you to go to sleep, Adrian said. I need you to come home. I will. When? When I finish one more thing. That means 3 more things. He looked at the folded remarks in his hand at her pencil note across the top. Probably. Call me from the car. Not after you get home. From the car. I will. And Dad? Yes. Don't let them make you explain the handshake more than they explain the door. After she hung up, Adrian stood a while with the phone still against his ear. By morning, the decision had a form. North Star released a short statement at 8:30 a.m. after Dr. Avery and Deputy Renee Marshall had both been notified privately. Adrian refused the first draft because it used the phrase guest confusion. Maya removed it. The final version said valid credentials had been overridden, incident documentation had been discouraged, and an independent review had begun. It named no one. That angered people who wanted a spectacle. It also denied Henry and Weller the chance to claim they had been convicted by press release before the inquiry finished. At noon, North Star's board met in emergency session. Weller did not attend. His counsel sent a letter calling the evening a regrettable misunderstanding caused by transition stress and ambiguous guest categories. Henry attended remotely from a paneled office, saying almost nothing until money came up. "My foundation's pledge remains under review," he said. "I would hate for students to suffer because this board prefers optics to partnership." Adrian looked at the screen. "Students suffer when access depends on flattering the donor." Henry's smile was small. "That will play well online." "This meeting is not online." "No, but you are behaving as if it is." Rosalind intervened before Adrian could answer. "The board has 3 motions. The first motion suspended North Star's renewal negotiations with Sentinel Event Security pending vendor review. It passed unanimously, with Henry abstaining. The second removed Henry Vale from all apprenticeship fund governance until the independent investigation concluded. Henry objected that his foundation's money entitled him to a seat at the table. Celeste asked counsel to read the fund charter. Counsel did. The money gave reporting rights, not control. Motion passed. The third motion created a temporary access and dignity protocol for all North Star-sponsored public events. Credential scan overrides had to be logged with a reason, a second reviewer, and notice to the corporate secretary. Accessibility entrances could not be treated as lower status entrances. Security could document concerns without sponsor approval, and guest category disputes required verification before removal. It was not poetry. It was better than poetry. It had fields people had to fill out. Adrian felt no triumph when the vote ended. He felt the kind of heaviness that came after lifting something badly and realizing the injury would announce itself later. Then Rosalind said, "There is one more matter." Adrian looked up. "Dr. Avery has responded to your invitation." Maya forwarded the email to the boardroom display. Dr. Avery had declined the ceremonial chairmanship of the first oversight meeting. He wrote that he would not become proof of repair before repair existed. But he agreed to attend as a voting member if Deputy Marshal co-chaired, if 2 current apprentices were added with full speaking rights, and if the first agenda item was not donor recognition but entry barriers. Celeste smiled. Adrian read the email twice. "He's right," he said. Henry's video tile froze for a second, then returned. "You're letting insult dictate program design." "No," Adrian said. "We're letting the people closest to the door describe how it locks." The motion to revise the first oversight meeting passed without Henry. At 3:15 p.m., North Star's facilities team removed the old Gala photos from the company lobby screens before they ever cycled in. No image of Weller beside Adrian. No handshake that had not happened. No caption pretending a smooth transfer. In its place, Maya posted the new temporary protocol on the internal site. The first visible change was small: a form, a second name, a required reason. But by 5 o'clock, every event manager in the company had opened it, and Henry Vale's foundation sent a formal notice freezing the $3 million pledge. The freeze notice arrived with foundation letterhead and the kind of courtesy that came sharpened at the edges. Henry Vale's lawyers expressed deep concern that North Star had allowed a moment of heightened sensitivity to compromise a long-standing philanthropic partnership. He reserved all rights. They requested a pause in public references to Vale Foundation support. They regretted any disappointment this might cause prospective apprentices. Adrian read the letter standing in the break room on the 23rd floor, where someone had left a pot of coffee to burn itself bitter on the warmer. Maya stood by the sink, arms folded. "Communications wants a response by 6, she said. "They want a fight by 6. They want guidance before reporters call." He looked through the glass wall toward the open office. People were pretending not to watch him. Less than a day, and already a donor had frozen $3 million. A retired CEO had hired counsel, and the company's internal site had more comments than the annual benefits survey. "What's the apprenticeship reserve?" he asked. "Enough to start smaller. Not enough for the full launch." "How much smaller?" "First cohort drops from 80 students to 32 without replacement funding." Adrian felt that number take hold. 32 seats meant 48 people would hear no before they ever reached the door. That was how repair could betray itself. A policy corrected upstairs could still leave someone's son working nights at a warehouse because adults in tuxedos had mishandled a threshold. He poured the bad coffee anyway. Maya watched him take one sip and wince. "You don't have to punish yourself," she said. This coffee filed a complaint against itself. She laughed despite the morning. The small sound helped. It faded. "I owe you an apology," Adrian said. Maya looked at him over the rim of her paper cup. "Last night in the foyer, when I said I should have been let in after you verified me, it came out like I was putting your authority in the same bucket as his refusal. You were angry. I was still wrong." She nodded after a moment. "Thank you." He expected that to close it. It did not. Maya set her cup down. "I also should have stepped between you and Thomas sooner. I saw where it was going. I was trying to preserve the announcement, the optics, the schedule. I told myself the cleanest correction was minutes away. The announcement did matter. Not more than the door." Adrian looked at her, and for the first time since the gala, some of the tightness in his chest loosened. Not because the apology fixed anything, but because she had named her own silence without trying to decorate it. At 4 o'clock, North Star held the first repair meeting in Conference Room C, a room usually reserved for budget reviews and birthday cupcakes. Dr. Avery arrived with his walnut cane and no tuxedo. Deputy Renee Marshall wore the same bronze jacket from the footage, as if refusing to let the night own it. 2 apprentice representatives joined by video from community college labs, one still in a welding jacket, the other with safety goggles pushed up into her hair. Henry's seat remained empty. Good. The first agenda item was not donor recognition. Maya displayed a simple map of the museum entrances, credential checkpoints, and decision points where discretion had overridden data. No speeches, no slogans, just a diagram of where people had been stopped and who had been allowed to make the stop invisible. Deputy Marshall spoke first. "When my badge scanned green, the question changed from whether I had access to whether I looked like I should have access. That switch is the whole problem." The apprentice in goggles nodded. "That happens at labs, too. People check our visitor tags like we wandered in from a tour." Dr. Avery tapped his cane once. "Then build the rule for the switch, not the apology after it." By the end of 2 hours, the temporary protocol had grown teeth. North Star would require third-party accessibility review at sponsored events, publish appeal instructions on guest confirmations, audit credential overrides quarterly, and protect security staff who documented pressure from executives or donors. Apprenticeship oversight seats would include 2 current apprentices with voting rights on access design, transportation support, and site placement. It was not enough. It was measurable. At the end, Daniel Ruiz entered by invitation. He stood near the door until Dr. Avery pointed to a chair. "Sit down, Mr. Ease. Standing like a defendant won't make you more honest." Daniel sat. He apologized without explaining himself into heroism. He said he had let a powerful man define an incident out of existence because it felt safer than writing what happened. He had asked Sentinel to reassign him from North Star events until the review was complete. Avery listened. Then he said, "Next time, write while your hand is still shaking." Daniel nodded, eyes wet. Adrian did not ask anyone to forgive anyone else. When the meeting ended, Deputy Marshall stayed behind. She handed Adrian a folded photocopy from her bag. The original invitation showing the east entrance marked for accessibility and civic partners. "I kept it because I'm a procurement officer," she said. "We keep paper when people improvise." Adrian smiled. "May we add it to the file?" "You may add a copy. I keep originals." That evening, North Star posted the revised oversight charter internally before announcing it outside. Employees opened it, argued over it, marked it up, and noticed that for once a company lesson had not been turned into a poster. At 8:11 p.m., exactly 24 hours after Adrian had stood outside the ballroom, Simone placed his reheated dinner on the kitchen table. 32 seats is not 80, she said. "No, so what now?" Adrian looked at the photocopy Deputy Marshall had allowed him to bring home, its crease, running through the printed words accessible entrance. "Now we find 48 seats without selling the door." The 48 seats became the number everyone tried to avoid saying. By Monday morning, it sat inside every conversation at North Star like an extra person at the table. Communications called it a funding gap. Finance called it a cohort reduction exposure. Legal called it a reputational risk attached to a donor action. Adrian called it 48 students, and after the third meeting, other people began calling it that too. He did not do it to win a language fight. He did it because numbers without faces became easy to move. The independent review finished its preliminary phase in 12 days. That was fast by corporate standards and slow by the standards of anyone whose humiliation had already circulated online. The investigator confirmed what the preserved records showed. 3 valid credentials had been challenged or overridden. 2 incident notes had been softened after the fact. Peter Lang had edited Dr. Avery's departure note after speaking with Henry Vale. Weller had discouraged Daniel's report after Maya had verified Adrian's access. The findings did not say every person involved had the same motive. They said each person had made a choice. Peter Lang was barred from North Star events and placed under museum review. Sentinel Event Security lost its renewal and agreed to retraining and documentation changes if it wanted to bid again in the future. Weller's paid advisory transition agreement was terminated for interfering with a preservation process, though his retirement remained legally intact. Henry Vale was removed permanently from apprenticeship governance, and his foundation withdrew the pledge 2 days later with a statement about mission drift. The phrase annoyed Simone so much she taped it to the refrigerator with a magnet shaped like a peach. "What does mission drift even mean?" she asked. "It means the mission moved away from his nameplate. That's not drift, that's navigation." Adrian laughed for the first time that week without feeling guilty. Repair arrived less dramatically than damage had. North Star did not replace the $3 million overnight. It found $800,000 from a vendor innovation reserve that had been sitting unused because nobody wanted to admit the pilot it funded had failed. A regional bank added low-interest equipment financing after Deputy Marshal connected them to a workforce coalition. 2 unions offered paid mentoring hours. The city contributed transit passes for apprentices placed at sites beyond bus transfer zones. The first cohort landed at 64 seats, not 80, not 32. 64, with a written path to reach 80 by spring if the Oversight Board approved the new funding mix. At the first public apprenticeship meeting, Dr. Avery arrived 10 minutes early and sat beside the 2 apprentice representatives instead of near Adrian. Deputy Marshal co-chaired with a binder full of marked tabs. Daniel attended only the opening 15 minutes at Dr. Avery's request and described the new incident report rule from the perspective of someone who had failed the old one. His voice shook once. He kept going. "I thought not writing it would keep the evening from getting worse," Daniel said. "It made the record worse. That matters because the next person has to fight a ghost instead of a sentence." Nobody applauded. It would have made the moment too easy. Dr. Avery simply nodded and moved to the next agenda item. After the meeting, Maya stood with Adrian in the hallway outside the training lab while apprentices tried on hard hats and argued about whose looked least ridiculous. The hallway smelled of new rubber soles, machine oil, and the cardboard dust of unpacked equipment. On the wall, someone had taped the revised access protocol beside the lab safety rules. It looked plain there, almost boring. Adrian liked it better that way. Maya handed him a folder. "Final corrective actions for your signature." He opened it. The first page listed policy changes. The second listed vendor requirements. The third named staff protections for reporting pressure from executives, sponsors, or board members. The fourth was a letter to Dr. Avery and Deputy Marshal, acknowledging specific failures without asking them to lend their names to North Star's redemption. "Forgiveness paragraph," Adrian said. "No forgiveness paragraph." Maya confirmed. He signed. Through the glass, he saw Simone pretending not to be impressed by a drill press demonstration. She had come because Dr. Avery invited her, not because Adrian had asked. She stood with her arms crossed, listening to an apprentice explain torque like it was sacred. When she caught Adrian watching, she pointed at his cuffs and gave a stern little nod. "Still correct." Dr. Avery joined him at the glass. "She's got your inspection face," he said. "She got it from her mother. Then her mother had standards." She did. For a while they watched the apprentices together. "I read the letter," Dr. Avery said. "It tells the truth close enough to stand on." Adrian felt the sentence in his chest. Across the lab, Deputy Marshal redirected a photographer who had tried to stage the apprentices around a donor plaque that no longer existed. She pointed instead toward the workbenches, the transit maps, the safety checklist, the people learning with their hands. The first photograph North Star released showed no CTO, no retired executive, no oversized check. It showed Simone laughing as an apprentice helped her lift a hard hat off her braids without catching the strap. That evening, Adrian drove home with the windows cracked. At a red light, he saw the museum's Gala clip again on a newsstand screen, but now it ran beside the findings summary and the first cohort announcement. The story had not disappeared. It had been corrected in public. Simone texted from the passenger seat, though he was right beside her. "Hey, you still owe me dinner that isn't reheated." Adrian looked at her, then at the light turning green. "Pick the place," he said. She smiled down at her phone, and for one night the door they walked through belonged to nobody who needed convincing. 6 weeks after the gala, North Star held the first apprenticeship orientation in a training facility that used to be a postal warehouse. No chandelier hung above it. No quartet played near the doors. The ceiling pipes were exposed, the concrete floor had yellow safety lanes painted through the center, and the coffee came from 2 metal urns on a folding table beside a stack of name tags. Adrian arrived early enough to watch the entrance work. That mattered to him now. 2 volunteers stood at the front desk with a printed protocol between them. One greeted people. One checked the list. If a badge failed to scan, the volunteer wrote down the reason, called a second reviewer, and kept the person at the desk instead of sending them somewhere vague. Beside the assigned table, an accessibility placard listed the same contact number as the main entrance. Plain, visible, boring enough to survive, Dr. Avery came in at 8:02 with his walnut cane and a paper cup of coffee he had clearly brought from somewhere better. Deputy Marshal followed with 3 students who had missed the first bus and still made it on time because the new Transit Pass program had added a transfer cushion. Daniel Ruiz was not there. He had submitted his retraining certificate the week before, along with a written request to remain off North Star events until the independent monitor cleared Sentinel's new reporting process. Adrian respected the request. Final consequence arrived that morning by courier. The board's closed investigative record, the termination of his advisory agreement, and a formal notice that North Star would not name the apprenticeship lecture series after him, as originally planned. The company did not strip his entire career from the walls. It did not pretend he had never built anything useful. It simply refused to let usefulness purchase silence around harm. Henry Vale lost more than a committee seat. Once the findings became public, the city removed his foundation from a pending workforce partnership review, citing conflict of interest concerns. He issued one more statement about reputational theater. No one at North Star answered it. The students had equipment to unpack. The first cohort settled at 72. The final 8 seats came from the quietest source. Employees who voted to redirect an unused executive hospitality budget into trainee stipends. It was not enough to make anyone a hero. It was enough to make the number whole. 80 chairs filled the warehouse floor. Adrian stood at the back while Maya reviewed the day's schedule. She did not turn the protocol into a sermon. She showed students where to appeal a site assignment, who controlled safety sign-off, how transportation support worked, and what to do if anyone treated a badge like a suggestion. Simone sat near the aisle with a notebook open on her knees. Adrian suspected she was drawing instead of listening. When he passed behind her, she tilted the page just enough for him to see a sketch of a doorway with too many locks on it, and beside it, a small hand holding a key ring. Whispered. "That for school?" she whispered back. "Maybe for me, he let that be enough." At the end of orientation, Dr. Avery asked for the microphone. He did not speak long. He told the students that systems did not become fair because good people believed they were good. It became fair when ordinary steps were written down, checked by more than one person, and changed when they failed somebody. Then he pointed his cane toward the sign-in desk. "That table is not decoration," he said. "It is part of the program." Afterward, Deputy Marshal caught Adrian near the tool lockers. "You got the seats," she said. "Got the seats. Don't become allergic to saying you did something right." He smiled. "I'm working on it." Outside, the old warehouse doors had been propped open for air. August heat rolled in with the smell of asphalt, river damp, and food from a truck parked near the curb. Students spilled out in small groups comparing schedules and hard hats, already turning the place into something less official and more alive. Adrian found Simone sitting on the loading dock, swinging her heels against the concrete. "Hungry?" he asked. You owe me non-reheated dinner. I remember. She looked toward the entrance table where Maya was helping a late student correct a misspelled name without making him step aside. Dad? Yeah. When he didn't shake your hand, did you know all this would happen? Adrian sat beside her. The concrete was warm through his trousers. No, he said. I knew I wasn't going to leave the record blank. She nodded like that answer fit better than a perfect one. His phone buzzed. For once, he almost ignored it. Then he saw Maya's name and opened the message. A photograph filled the screen. The East Entrance Protocol, now posted at a different North Star site 2 counties away. Under it, a handwritten note from a field supervisor read, "Need review." This entrance is where contractors get separated from staff. Same pattern may be happening here. Adrian looked at the open warehouse doors, at the 80 students walking through them without asking permission to belong. He did not stand right away. He saved the photo, slipped the phone into his pocket, and offered Simone his hand. Dinner first, he said. She took it. Behind them, the sign-in table stayed where everyone could see it.